The screaming had not stopped for 11 days. Nurse coordinator Thrin pressed two of her four hands against her ear membranes as she walked down the corridor of Wildlife Rehabilitation Station Harmony 7. The sound coming from Enclosure 17 was not like anything she had heard in her 40 years of work. It was raw, desperate, the kind of sound that made every creature on the station pace in their own spaces, unable to rest. The karate cub was dying. Not from injury, not from sickness. It was dying from grief. Thrin stopped at the observation window and looked inside. The baby predator was the size of a large earth dog, covered in patches of dark scales and silver fur. 6 legs carried it in endless circles around the enclosure. Its venomous tail dragged behind it, too exhausted to even lift anymore. Yellow eyes that should have been bright with hunting instinct were now dull and empty. 3 months old. Orphaned when poachers killed its mother for her scales. Brought here to be saved, but they could not save something that refused to live. Status. Thrin asked the medical assistant beside her. No change, the small Bravari replied, his feathers flat with worry. It has not eaten in 6 days. Water intake is minimal. Sleep patterns show it rests for only minutes at a time before waking in panic. Heart rate remains dangerously elevated. Thrin closed her eyes. They had tried everything. Sedation chemicals that its predator biology burned through in minutes. Calming sound frequencies that only made it more aggressive. Surrogate bonding attempts that ended with 3 staff members in medical care. Even a holographic projection of its dead mother, which the cub had seen through immediately and attacked until it destroyed the projector. The cub screamed again. The sound echoed through the walls. The council meets tomorrow, Thrin said quietly. They will recommend termination. Mercy ending. The assistant said nothing. There was nothing to say. Nurse coordinator Thrin. She turned to find a human standing behind her. The species was still new to galactic wildlife work, only accepted into the program 2 years ago. This one was female, average height for her kind, with brown skin and black hair pulled back from her face. She carried only a small bag and wore the simple uniform of a xenobiologist. Dr. Pelly Vasser, the human said, extending her hand in that strange greeting custom her species used. I was called in as a consultant. Thrin looked at the hand, then back at the human's face. You are the specialist they sent? For this case, I work with difficult patients. Predator species, mostly. This is not a difficult patient, Thrin said. This is an impossible one. That cub has fought off every attempt to help it. It nearly killed a Dravathi pack bonder who has successfully bonded with over 200 orphan predators. What exactly do you think you can do? Dr. Vasser did not seem offended. She simply stepped closer to the observation window and watched the cub pace. Her eyes moved slowly, tracking its movements, studying its behavior. For a long moment, she said nothing. Has it had anywhere to hide? She finally asked. Thrin blinked all 3 of her eyes. Hide? Is an apex predator. The karate are the most dangerous hunters on 7 worlds. They do not hide from anything. Everything hides from something, Dr. Vasser said. Her voice was calm, almost soft. On my planet, we have animals called tigers. They are apex predators too. They can kill almost anything in their environment. But when they're stressed or scared, they seek out dens. Caves. Enclosed spaces. They do not feel safe in the open, even when nothing is threatening them. The enclosure is state-of-the-art, Thrin replied. Temperature controlled. Lighting ciclas. Adequate space for movement. It has everything it needs. But does it have what it wants? Thrin stared at the human. I do not understand the difference. Dr. Vasser turned away from the window. That cub has been in an open space for 11 days. No walls close enough to touch. No ceiling low enough to feel secure. No corner small enough to defend. You have given it a habitat designed for a healthy adult karate. But that is not what it is. It is a baby, a traumatized baby, and right now, the whole universe feels too big and too dangerous. What are you suggesting? I need a box. Thrin waited for more. When nothing came, she tilted her head. A box. A standard cargo container. Empty. Nothing special. Just 4 walls and a roof. small enough that the cub can fit inside with little room to spare. Dr. Vasser smiled slightly. Where I come from, we learned something a long time ago. Sometimes the most frightened creatures need the smallest spaces. This is ridiculous, Thrin said. We have the most advanced xenobiology equipment in this sector. We have tried treatments that cost more than your annual salary. And you want to give it a box? Yes. The cub screamed again. Thrin looked through the window at the pacing animal, watched it stumble slightly as exhaustion pulled at its legs. Tomorrow, the council would vote to end its suffering. Fine, Thrin said. Get your box, human. But when it does not work, I expect you to be present when we explain to the council why we wasted another day on false hope. Dr. Vasser nodded. If it does not work, I will accept full responsibility. She walked away down the corridor, already speaking into her communication device about cargo containers and dimensions. Thrin watched her go and wondered if all humans were this strange, or just this one. 12 specialists stood in the conference room, and none of them believed the human would succeed. Dr. Vasser sat at the end of the table, listening as each one explained what they had already tried. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. She simply took notes on a small device and let them speak. The Silivrathi medical team had gone first. They had used chemical sedation, 3 different compounds designed to calm aggressive predator species. The cub's body had burned through all of them within minutes. Its metabolism was too fast, too efficient. Evolution had made the karate resistant to toxins because their prey often fought back with venom and poison. We increased the dosage to dangerous levels, the lead physician said. Any higher, and we would have stopped its heart. It made no difference. The cub remained awake and distressed. The Meloran sound therapists had tried next. Their species communicated through complex frequencies, and they had developed treatments that could calm almost any nervous system in the galaxy. They had played low tones designed to slow brain activity and induce rest. The cub reacted with increased aggression, the therapist explained. We believe the frequencies may have triggered a defensive response. Karate hunt partially by sound. Our treatment may have felt like an approaching threat rather than comfort. The Dravathi pack bonders had come after that. Their species had a natural gift for forming emotional connections with orphaned animals. They had saved thousands of young predators by becoming surrogate family members. It attacked us, the bonders said quietly. She still had healing patches on 2 of her arms. We approached slowly, carefully. We followed every protocol. But the moment we entered the enclosure, it saw us as enemies. 3 of our team were injured before we could retreat. Someone had suggested holographic projection. They had scanned images of the cub's dead mother from the poaching report and created a lifelike recreation. The theory was that the cub might accept a false parent long enough to stabilize. It knew immediately, Thrin said. The projection looked perfect to our eyes. But karate sensed things we cannot. Heat signatures, electromagnetic fields, perhaps even smell, though we are not certain. The cub became violent. It destroyed the projector and then refused to stop screaming for 6 hours straight. Isolation therapy had failed. Group exposure had failed. Environmental adjustments had failed. Everything had failed. So, Thrin concluded, looking at Dr. Vasser, you understand why we are skeptical about a box. The human set down her device. May I ask some questions? If you must. The enclosure the cub is in now. How large is it? Thrin checked her records. Standard predator habitat. Approximately 40 meters by 40 meters. Ceiling height of 15 meters. Designed to give adequate movement space for 40 meters, Dr. Vasser repeated. And the cub is roughly 1 meter long. Approximately, yes. So it is living in a space 40 times its own body length in every direction. The human leaned forward. When a karate mother raises her cubs in the wild, where does she keep them? The room went silent. Finally, one of the xenobiologists pulled up research files. Karate mothers typically den in caves or rock formations. The spaces are small, perhaps 3 to 4 meters across. Small, Dr. Vasser said. Enclosed. Defensible. Walls close enough to touch. A ceiling low enough to feel. But we cannot replicate a cave system, Thrin argued. The enclosure is designed for observation and medical access. We need to monitor. You do not need a cave. You need to give that cub a boundary. Dr. Vasser stood up. Every treatment you have tried has been about forcing the cub to feel better. Sedation to make it sleep. Sounds to make it calm. Surrogates to make it bond. Holograms to make it believe its mother is alive. You have been pushing solutions onto it. But that cub is a predator. It does not want to be controlled. It wants to control something. Control what? Thrin asked. Its space. Its safety. Its choices. The human walked to the window that overlooked the station's central hub. On Earth, we have a saying. You cannot make a frightened animal trust you. You can only give it a reason to trust itself. And a box does this. A box gives it walls. Walls means something cannot attack from that direction. A roof means nothing can strike from above. A single opening means only one direction to watch. For a baby predator alone in a universe without its mother, that is not a prison. That is a fortress. The specialists exchanged looks. Some seemed thoughtful. Others seemed doubtful. Most seemed tired. The council votes tomorrow, Thrin reminded her. If this does not work by morning, they will choose termination. The cub's suffering has gone on too long. Dr. Vasser nodded. Then we should not waste any more time talking. She left the conference room. An hour later, a maintenance worker delivered a standard cargo container to Enclosure 17. It was gray metal, 2 meters long, 1 meter wide, 1 meter tall. Nothing special, nothing advanced, just a box. Doctor Vasser had the workers place it in the corner of the enclosure, opening facing the center of the room. Then she sealed the enclosure doors and stepped back to the observation window. The cub stopped pacing, its yellow eyes fixed on a new object in its space. For the first time in 11 days, the screaming stopped. Silence filled the observation room like water filling a glass. Thrin stood frozen at the window, all 4 of her hands pressed flat against the transparent surface. Behind her, 6 other staff members had gathered, drawn by the impossible quiet that had spread through the station's corridors. For 11 days, the cub's screaming had been constant background noise. Now that it stopped, the absence of sound felt almost loud. Inside Enclosure 17, the karate cub stood perfectly still. Its yellow eyes were locked on the gray metal box in the corner. Every muscle in its small body was tense. Its 6 legs were planted firmly on the ground, ready to run or fight. It is going to attack it, whispered the Brevari assistant. Look at its posture. It thinks the box is a threat. Wait, Dr. Vasser said softly. She stood beside Thrin, arms crossed, watching with calm patience. Just wait. The cub took 1 step forward, then another. Its venomous tail lifted slightly off the ground, finally showing some energy after days of dragging exhaustion. It circled the box slowly, keeping several meters of distance between itself and the strange new object. 1 hour passed. The cub continued circling. 2 hours. It moved closer, tightening its path. 3 hours. It stopped directly in front of the box's opening and simply stared into the darkness inside. What is it doing? Thrin asked. Deciding, Dr. Vasser answered. Predators do not trust easily. It needs to convince itself that the box is safe before it will enter. And if it decides the box is not safe, then we try a different box. Different size, different material, different location. But I do not think we will need to. At hour 4, the cub lowered its head and stepped inside. The medical monitors immediately began updating. Thrin watched the data scroll across her screen with all 3 eyes wide open. Heart rate dropping, stress hormones decreasing, brain activity shifting from panic patterns to rest patterns. It is calming down, the Brevari said, his voice filled with disbelief. The readings show it is actually calming down. Inside the box, the cub turned around once, then twice, then settled into a curled position with its tail wrapped around its body. Its eyes remained open, watching the enclosure through the box's opening. But its breathing slowed, its muscles relaxed. And then, for the first time in 11 days, it slept. Real sleep. Deep sleep. The kind of sleep that baby predators needed to grow and heal. How? Thrin demanded, turning to face the human. How did you know this would work? Dr. Vasser smiled slightly. Because I have cats. Cats. small predators from Earth. Humans have lived alongside them for thousands of years. They hunt. They kill. They are capable of surviving in the wild without us. But give a cat an empty box, and it will climb inside and stay there for hours. We used to think it was strange behavior. Then we realized it was not strange at all. It was smart. Thrin shook her head. I do not understand. A box is a defensive position, Dr. Vasser explained. Four walls mean nothing can approach from behind or from the sides. A roof means nothing can attack from above. A single opening means you only have to watch one direction. For a predator, that is not a trap. That is the safest place in the world. But the cub is an apex predator. What could it possibly be afraid of? Everything. The human's voice softened. That cub watched its mother die. It was taken from everything it knew and placed in an environment full of strange sounds, strange smells, strange creatures. It had no walls, no boundaries, no way to protect itself. The enclosure you built was perfect for a healthy adult karate with confidence and territory. But for a traumatized baby, it was just endless open space where danger could come from any direction. Thrin looked back at the cub, sleeping peacefully in the metal container. Such a simple thing. Such an obvious thing, now that it had been explained. On Earth, Dr. Vasser continued, we learned this lesson many times. Dogs seek out small spaces when they are anxious. Cats hide in boxes and bags. Even humans feel safer in rooms than in open fields. We build walls not just to keep things out, but to make the world feel smaller, more manageable, less overwhelming. Your species builds inward, Thrin said slowly, while most galactic species build outward. Exactly. We make small spaces because small spaces feel safe. Big spaces feel exposed. It sounds backward to species that evolved differently. But for creatures like us and like that cub, sometimes the smallest room is the biggest comfort. The cub shifted in its sleep, making a small sound that was not a scream, but something softer, almost like a sigh. The council meeting, Thrin said. I will cancel it. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, human. It is sleeping now, but it has not eaten. It has not recovered. We are far from finished. Dr. Vasser nodded. I know, but for now let it rest. It has been awake for 11 days. It has earned some peace. Thrin looked at the box one more time. A metal container meant for shipping supplies, worth almost nothing. And yet it had done what all their advanced technology could not. Perhaps the humans knew things that the galaxy had forgotten. The cub ate for the first time on the second day after the box arrived. Dr. Vasser had placed a bowl of nutrient paste just outside the container's opening, close enough that the cub could reach it without fully leaving its shelter. She watched through the observation window as the small predator stretched its neck out, sniffed the food carefully, and then began to eat. Beside her, Thrin made a sound that might have been relief or might have been frustration. It was difficult to tell with Silavrathi. It still will not leave the box, the nurse coordinator said. It does not need to. Not yet. We cannot keep it in a cargo container forever. We are not keeping it there, Dr. Vasser replied. It is choosing to stay. There is a difference. The cub finished eating and retreated back into the darkness of its metal home. Its yellow eyes reflected the enclosure lights as it watched the bowl, perhaps hoping more food would appear. It drank water this morning, Thrin reported, checking her data pad. Sleep patterns are normalizing. Stress hormones are still elevated but decreasing. The improvement is significant. Good. I still do not understand. Thrin turned to face the human fully. Our methods were based on decades of research, advanced technology, species-specific behavioral science, and all of it failed while your simple box succeeded. How did your species figure this out? Dr. Vasser leaned against the wall and considered the question. We learned by accident, mostly. Humans have lived with animals for a very long time, longer than we have had science to explain what we were seeing. We domesticated wolves and turned them into dogs. We tolerated wild cats until they became our companions. We raised horses and cattle and sheep. And along the way, we noticed patterns. Patterns. Dogs that were nervous would hide under furniture. Cats would squeeze into tiny spaces that barely fit them. Horses would press against stable walls when storms came. We did not understand why at first. We just knew that these behaviors helped them feel better. So we started creating spaces for them. Crates for dogs, boxes for cats, stalls for horses, small, enclosed areas where they could retreat when the world became too much. Thrin's head tilted. Your species built shelters for your animals before you understood the science behind it. We built shelters for ourselves too. Humans do not like open plains. We feel exposed, vulnerable. Even our earliest ancestors chose caves over clearings. We surrounded ourselves with walls of stone, then wood, then metal. We made our spaces smaller and tighter because smaller spaces meant safety. But that is the opposite of what makes sense, Thrin argued. Larger spaces mean more room to escape, more options, more freedom, more directions for threats to come from, Dr. Vasser countered. More area to watch, more ground to defend. For a prey animal, open space might mean freedom. But for a predator, or for any creature that understands it can be hunted, open space means danger from every angle. The cub made a soft chirping noise from inside its box. Both women looked toward the enclosure. It is talking, Thrin said. That is a karate cub vocalization. They use it to communicate with their mothers. It probably smells the food and wants more, or is starting to associate this place with safety and comfort. Thrin paused, watching the cub settle back down. My people build our homes in tall towers. The higher the floor, the more prestigious the residence. We believe that distance from the ground means distance from danger. And humans build bunkers underground when we are truly afraid, Dr. Vasser said. We dig holes and fill them with supplies and seal ourselves inside. The deeper, the better. Your species hides beneath the surface of your world. When things get bad enough, yes. We call it sheltering, going to ground. Some humans spend fortunes building underground rooms that they hope they never have to use. Just knowing the room exists makes them feel safer. Thrin was quiet for a long moment. The Galactic Council considers humans to be a young species, primitive in many ways. Your technology is behind ours by centuries. Your social structures are chaotic and disorganized by our standards. And yet, you understand predators. You understand fear. You understand the need to have walls around you when the universe feels too large. Thrin looked at the box in the enclosure. Perhaps living on your death world taught you things that we forgot, or things we never learned because we never needed to. Dr. Vasser smiled. Earth is not kind to anything that lives there. Everything is either a predator or prey, and most things are both. We evolved alongside creatures that could kill us, and we learned to kill them in return. But we also learned to live with some of them, to understand them, to see ourselves in them. And you see yourself in that cub. I see every frightened creature I have ever known in that cub. Every dog that hid during thunderstorms. Every cat that climbed into a cardboard box. Every child that built a blanket fort because the world outside felt too scary. The human's voice was soft. Fear is universal. The need for safety is universal. And sometimes, the solutions are simpler than we want to believe. The cub chirped again from inside its box. Doctor Vasser pushed off from the wall. I think it is time for another feeding. 7 days after the box arrived, the cub left it for the first time. Not because it was forced, not because it was hungry or thirsty. It left because Dr. Vasser was sitting outside the enclosure, reading something on her data pad, and the cub wanted to see her. Thrin watched from the observation room as the small predator crept out of its metal shelter on careful legs. Its yellow eyes were fixed on the human woman on the other side of the transparent wall. It moved slowly, body low to the ground, tail swaying behind it for balance. Dr. Vasser did not look up. She did not move. She did not acknowledge the cub at all. The cub crept closer, 2 meters from the wall, 1 meter. It stopped directly in front of the human and sat down on the enclosure floor. Still, Dr. Vasser did not look up. The cub made a small chirping sound. The human turned a page on her data pad. The cub chirped again, louder this time. Dr. Vasser scratched her nose and kept reading. Finally, after several minutes, the human glanced up casually. She looked at the cub for a brief moment, gave a small nod, and then returned to her reading. The cub's entire body relaxed. It curled up on the floor in front of the wall and closed its eyes. What just happened? Thrin demanded over the communication system. Doctor. Vasser's voice came back soft and calm. It tested me. I passed. Tested you how? It left safety to approach me. That was a risk, a vulnerable moment. If I had reacted with excitement or tried to interact, I would have proven that I was focused on it, watching it, hunting it from its perspective. The human set down her datapad, but I ignored it. I showed it that its presence was not a threat to me and that I had no interest in controlling it. I let it make the choice to come to me without any pressure. You ignored a baby predator, so it would trust you. I showed it that I respected its space. That is what trust looks like to a creature that has been hurt. Thrin watched the cub sleeping peacefully on the enclosure floor, just centimeters from the wall where the human sat. It had chosen to rest near her rather than in its box. That was significant. That was progress. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Dr. Vasser would sit outside the enclosure at the same time each day, doing nothing in particular. Reading, writing notes, sometimes just sitting with her eyes closed. The cub would leave its box to approach her, and she would barely acknowledge it. Each day, the cub came closer. Each day, it stayed longer. On the 10th day, Dr. Vasser entered the enclosure. The staff held their breath. This was the moment that had failed before. The Dravathi pack bonders had entered with confidence and training. They had ended up in medical care, but Dr. Vasser did not approach the cub. She did not try to touch it or speak to it. She walked to the center of the enclosure and sat down on the floor with her back against the wall. Then she pulled out her datapad and began reading. The cub watched from inside its box. Minutes passed. The human did not move. Slowly, carefully, the cub emerged. It circled the human from a distance, testing, watching, waiting for her to make a move. She did not. The cub moved closer. 1 meter, half a meter. It could have reached out and touched her with its paw. Doctor Vasser turned a page, and then the cub did something no one expected. It pressed its head against the human side and closed its eyes. Thrin's 4 hands gripped the console in front of her. The staff around her made sounds of shock and wonder. On the monitors, the cub's stress hormones dropped to baseline level for the first time since it had arrived at the station. Doctor Vasser slowly, carefully lifted 1 hand and rested it on the cub's back. She did not grab or hold. She did not pull it closer. She simply let her hand rest there, warm and still. The cub sighed and pressed closer. How? Thrin breathed. Point, one of the younger staff members answered. She let it choose. Every step of the way, she let it choose. Later that evening, Dr. Vasser emerged from the enclosure to find Thrin waiting for her. The nurse coordinator's expression was difficult to read, but her voice was steady. You gave it safety first, Thrin said. Then you gave it time. Then you let it decide what it wanted. That is not a treatment protocol. That is patience. Patience is the treatment, Dr. Vasser replied. For creatures that have been hurt, trust cannot be demanded. It cannot be scheduled or forced. It can only be earned, slowly, by proving that you will not take their choices away. Your species learned this from your death world. We learned it from being both predator and prey. We know what it feels like to be hunted. We know what it feels like to be afraid. And we know that the fastest way to make a frightened creature dangerous is to corner it. The human smiled slightly. So we do not corner. We wait. We let them come to us. And eventually they do. The cub chirped from inside the enclosure, already looking toward the door, waiting for the human to return. 3 months after the box arrived, the transport ship came to take the cub to its new home. The Karate Sanctuary world was located 2 systems away, a protected planet where the species could live and hunt and thrive without fear of poachers. Other Karate lived there, some wild, some rehabilitated like this cub. It would have territory. It would have family. It would have a chance at a real-life doctor. Vasser stood in the transport bay, watching the workers load supplies into the ship. The cub sat beside her, no longer small enough to be called a baby. 3 months of proper nutrition and rest had transformed it into a healthy juvenile predator, strong and bright-eyed. Its scales gleamed. Its fur was thick and clean. Its tail no longer dragged on the ground. IT still slept in a box every night. They had given it larger ones as it grew, and it had accepted each new shelter without complaint. The current box was nearly twice the size of the original cargo container, lined with soft padding that the cub had arranged exactly how it wanted. "The ship is ready," Thrin said, approaching them. She looked at the cub, then at the human. "The sanctuary keepers have been briefed on its preferences. They have prepared an enclosed den structure in its territory. Good. It will need somewhere to retreat until it adjusts." They were surprised by the request. Apparently, most adult karate do not use dens. This one will, at least for a while. Dr. Vasser reached down and ran her hand along the cub's back. It leaned into the touch, making that soft chirping sound it had started using only around her. Old habits are hard to break, and sometimes they do not need to be broken at all. The cub looked up at her with yellow eyes that were no longer dull with grief. They were sharp now, alert, alive. "It does not want to leave you," Thrin observed. "It needs to leave me. The sanctuary is where it belongs, with its own kind, in a place where it can grow into what it was meant to be." Dr. Vasser knelt down, so she was eye level with the predator that had once been too broken to survive. "You're going to be okay. You know that now." The cub chirped and pressed its head against her shoulder. "One of the transport workers will travel with it," Thrin said. "We have trained them in your methods. They will sit with it. Ignore it. Let it choose when to interact." "Good. That will help." "Dr. Vasser." Thrin hesitated, which was unusual for her. "The council has asked me to extend an offer. We would like you to remain at this station permanently, as a consultant for difficult cases." The human stood up slowly. "Difficult cases like this one. There will always be more difficult cases. Traumatized predators. Orphan young. Animals that do not respond to our standard treatments." Thrin's three eyes met the human's too. "We could use someone who understands Earth logic." Dr. Vasser looked around the transport bay, at the ships coming and going, at the staff members from a dozen different species working together, at the karate cub sitting patiently beside her, waiting to see what she would do. "All right," she said finally. "I will stay." Thrin made a sound that might have been satisfaction. "I will inform the council. Your new quarters will be ready by tomorrow. Make sure there is a small room, enclosed. No windows. You need a box of your own." Dr. Vasser smiled. "Everyone needs a box sometimes." The transport ship's engines began to warm up. It was time. Dr. Vasser walked the cub to the loading ramp. A new cargo container sat inside the ship, padded and comfortable, positioned in a quiet corner away from the noise and activity. "The cub's box for the journey." "Go on," she said. "Go home." The cub hesitated at the bottom of the ramp. It turned back to look at her one last time. "You're going to be fine," Dr. Vasser told it. "You survived the worst thing that ever happened to you. Everything else is just living." The cub chirped once, soft and low. Then it walked up the ramp, entered its box, and settled down inside. Its eyes reflected the light as it watched her through the opening. The ramp closed. The ship lifted off, and the cub was gone. Thrin came to stand beside the human as they watched the transport disappear into the stars. "You changed that animal's life with a cargo container. I gave a place to feel safe. It did the rest. The galaxy thinks humans are primitive, simple creatures from a simple world." Thrin paused. "But you understand something that the rest of us forgot. Perhaps something we never knew." "What is that?" "That the most dangerous creatures in the universe are also the most frightened. And the way to reach them is not with technology or force or advanced behavioral science." Thrin looked at the human with something like respect. "It is with patience and boxes and the wisdom to let scared things come to you on their own terms." Dr. Vasser watched the stars for a long moment before responding. "We did not conquer Earth by being the strongest or the fastest," she said finally. "We did it by being the most patient, by watching and waiting and learning what other creatures needed, and by building very, very good boxes. Somewhere in the depths of space, a karate cub curled up in a metal container and fell asleep, dreaming of dens and safety and the strange, soft-handed predator who had taught it that the universe could be survived after all."